And now I have the distinct honor and privilege of presenting our speaker. I would say a man who needs no introduction, but that goes without saying. But the truth is, we are among the luckiest. We are among the luckiest of all the representative delegations in the United States, because we have a solid conservative who understands the Constitution, who has written a book about it. And by the way, copies of his book are on sale right over there. But he's written a book about it, and he lives what he has written. He votes the way he campaigns. He believes the way our founding fathers believed, and he's brought those beliefs to Washington to represent us all in the way we should be represented, to represent us all in the way we deserve to be represented, the way we used to be represented when there were real leaders in this country. And now we have one who's returned. We have one who is living up to the standards of the giants who preceded him in Washington. And we are very fortunate to have him here today to speak to us on the occasion of the opening of the headquarters of the Republican Club of Southeast Volusia County. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Congressman Ron DeSantis.
I really appreciate being able to come here today. This is very exciting with this headquarters, and people like Randy who have helped the club. It's just like we can't say enough about what people have done. I think that this club down here is one of the best Republican clubs that we have in our country. And the way I know that is because when I need to get petitions, for example, to get on the ballot, we go to you guys, and it's not even a question that we are going to get back thousands of petitions, because people like you will go out, take time out of your day, sweat, knock on doors, get people to sign up for guys like me. And at the end of the day, you need to have that if you want to be successful in this business. And so you guys recognize that. And I just want to let you know, I very much appreciate everything you've done for me, you've done for the Republican Party, and you're one of the reasons why this area is a red area in southeastern Volusia, and probably the main reason. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for all that you've done for me. So the question is why do this? Why come out here and give your time? I mean, it's fun. It's all fun to visit with everybody. I have a lot of friends here. I know you all are friends with each other, and that's great. But you know what? You can make friends doing other things. I mean, you can play golf, you can go boat, you can go play cards with someone. So why come here? And I think it's because the country needs people like you to step up and say no more. You look at what's happening in Washington right now. Just yesterday, and I've been involved with this IRS investigation for a year. We've been asking for Lois Lerner to cooperate. She didn't. I voted to hold her in contempt of Congress. Yeah. We've asked for documents. We want her emails, and the IRS gives us excuse after excuse. Finally, the commissioner said that he would provide the emails when he testified in front of our committee a couple weeks ago. And what did we find out yesterday? That all the emails in question that go to whether the IRS abused their authority and targeted Americans based on their political beliefs just happen to have been lost. Now think about that for a minute. If you were ever the subject of an IRS investigation and they asked for your documents and your excuse was that the documents have been lost, you would be presumed guilty and you would be taken to task under the law as fast as you can say it. There's no doubt about that. So the IRS is in a situation where they're essentially living above the law. They don't think that they need to comply with the law. They don't think that there should be any oversight of that as an organization. Founding fathers understood the power to tax is the power to destroy. If you have a taxing agency that's off the reservation and is not complying with the rule of law, that makes all of our freedoms less secure. So I'm going to go back up to Washington this week, and that's going to be the first order of business We cannot let up on the IRS. They got to find those emails, and if they don't, then that IRS commissioner needs to face the consequences. And if Eric Holder's not going to do anything about it, then we need to get Eric Holder out of office. It's sad that it's an honor to be able to serve our veterans, but it's sad that they have to come to their congressman to try to figure out how they can get care from the VA. And yet this president just has not been interested in this issue at all. You look at what's happening on our southern border right now. You have scores of illegal immigrants, foreigners coming over the border in violation of the law. What does this president do? He immediately sends a fleet of doctors. They're getting on-the-spot medical care. Eric Holder sends them attorneys at taxpayer expense so that they're able to have legal representation. Meanwhile, we have veterans, U.S. citizens, who've served our country and have been injured, and what are they doing? Some of them are dying while waiting in line so that a corrupt bureaucracy can enrich itself at taxpayer expense. If that contrast doesn't sum up all that's wrong with this administration, then I don't know what does. But there are few things that I'm not surprised about in Washington when I see the depth of the corruption with respect to how this president thumbs his nose as veterans. That truly gets me angry. I hope it gets all of you interested in continuing to do what you're doing. I look at the president, I look at what we're supposed to do. The job of the federal government is to preserve and protect individual liberty, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Yet this president, he actually has released over 36,000 illegal immigrants who've been convicted of felonies. And so we asked the Department of Homeland Security, well, provide us the information on that. And they provided us the crimes that these guys have been committed against. He's released murderers, he's released rapists, he's released people who have committed extortion, arson, you name it. So if somebody comes to the country illegally and commits felonies, they need to be sent back to where they came from. This president thinks it's better to release them into our communities. And so he's utterly failing at protecting the life, liberty, and property of the American people. I look at what's the problem in Washington, and look, Eric Cantor was defeated in a primary, the #2 ranking Republican in the House. And I think the reason he was defeated, and I think the reason why it can be frustrating up there at times, is because a lot of what I said in the campaign is similar to what a lot of other people say. The difference is once you get up there, are you going to actually do what you said you were going to do, or are you going to drink the Kool-Aid and start to become part of the problem? See, I went up there understanding that we need to change Washington. So I have no interest in dealing with things as they are. I want to fight the business as usual and try to make change. And so the example I give is, I was rated as the #1 taxpayer advocate of anybody in Florida, our whole congressional delegation, including our senators. And the reason is because when people go up there, money for them is power. The more largesse and pork they can spread around, the more power they can get for themselves. And so from them, more spending can actually be better for them. Well, the way I look at it is, if someone wants to spend money on something, I literally envision myself walking over to someone like Stan, taking his wallet out of his back pocket, taking his money out, and I have to look him in the eye and say, you know what? Am I willing to take your money and spend it on something? And I have to look him in the eye and explain why I did that. So I can do that when it comes to our national defense. I can do it with a straight face about Veterans Affairs. There's some other things I can do it about. What I can't do it is look him in the eye and say I need his money for more pork barrel projects or corporate welfare or some of the nonsense that you see put into Washington. And so if I think that I could not get away with looking him in the eye and explaining why I took the money out of his wallet, I don't vote to spend the money. I mean, it's just really that simple. And so I think our task going forward is to understand that we've really never been at a point, I think, and certainly my life, and I bet you most of your life, where things seem to be going wrong on all cylinders for our country. And that's part of a function of the leadership that we see in Washington. We had the 70th anniversary of D-Day recently. And see those old vets go out there was very inspirational. And so when I think about what we need to do, those guys went out there, many of them took bullets, a lot of them died, obviously. The ones that survived, we're happy to have. They had the chance, or they had to save the world, and they did it. What did they sacrifice for? We're just going to let America descend into just some other country. We're going to be pushed around on the world stage. We're going to have a financial crisis that bankrupts us and denies opportunity for the next generation. That is not honoring what those men did. And so I think for us, the battle is joined for 2014. We need a big turnout. We need a Republican victory across the board. And just think, we may not be able to affect this in Florida, but if everyone throughout the country thinks like we do, Harry Reid will no longer be the majority leader. So that's the charge. Let's take back the country. It's my honor at this point to officially cut the ribbon if I get the scissors that we'll be able to do. What you guys are doing is very, very important. The folks who have helped put this together, we can't thank you enough. I don't need to tell you guys to use this. I know you're going to make very good use at it. So it's my pleasure to officially welcome everyone to the Southeast Volusia GOP headquarters. Few minutes. We can go back on the party. If anyone's got any questions for me, I'd be happy to take some. Yes, sir.
Mark, what is your happy point in Washington? What do you feel that's been going on in your life?
The thing is that if you understand what the people are expecting, and you always keep that in mind, you do see opportunities where you can make a difference. And I've been able to do that individually, and I've been able to join with a lot of the younger members to push for reforms that I think are going to be very good for the country. I've also joined with people in the Senate like Mike Lee to offer really bold reforms that are going to put more power in the hands of the people and provide more economic opportunity. So I think there's a good nucleus there. I think that some of the old guard, certainly in the Democratic Party, even in our party, I don't think some of the old guard really appreciates the extent to which the American people really want to see things change in Washington. And so it's incumbent upon guys like me to constantly be carrying the torch of changing Washington and sending more power back to the American people. Yes, sir.
I want to follow up to that. I was going to ask you, there's nothing we can do if the Democratic old guard except vote them out of office. How can we change the old guard of the Republican Party? They have to change or our party is not going to be successful.
Well, the way you do it is you got to send enough people up there so we can control the agenda. We don't have that right now. And then once you do that, at the end of the day, a lot of these old guard, they just want to stay in office. And so if guys like me are pushing a conservative reform agenda that's popular with voters, they're going to go along with it if they think it will allow them to stay in office. And so that is what we got to do, convince them that it's in their own interest to start getting on board with some of these things. And when that becomes apparent, look, when they banned earmarks a couple years ago, 10 years ago, that would have been unthinkable. But the voters said, stop wasting our money, stop doing this. And it got to the point where they had to change that. Otherwise, they would have felt some consequences. And so we need to do that across the board on these issues. Yes, ma'am.
How do you feel about term limits, and would you push for that?
I have pushed for it. I am a co-sponsor of a constitutional amendment to impose term limits on members of Congress. If I had to pick one thing that we could do in terms of any constitutional amendment, well, that would be probably 1A. It would be term limits, 1A. 1B would be a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution so that politicians can't bankrupt us. And number 3 would be my constitutional amendment to make the ruling class live under the laws that they impose on everybody else. Well, I'm actually, I don't know that that's a foregone conclusion yet. We have Raul Labrador from Idaho who's running as a conservative alternative to McCarthy. And look, McCarthy's a very nice guy, but he's basically being fleeted up after Cantor was voted out. So to me, that's telling me that that leadership team isn't taking the message of Cantor's defeat. So I think it'd be a mistake to just fleet him up without having a robust competition. And so I'm looking at people like Raul Labrador, and if Raul Labrador wins, then you don't have a whips race. And so we're going to see what happens with majority leader before we worry about whip. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I have a question on all these children that are being shipped in from Mexico. And now that, I heard right before I came today, they're sending 1,000 to Maryland, 1,000 to Virginia, all over the country. Where are these kids coming from?
So they're coming from other parts of Central America. One, Mexico is allowing them full transit through the country. We need to tell the Mexicans to stop doing that and protect their borders and protect our borders on their side. Why can they get away with continuing to export problems to our country? They shouldn't have been able to do that. The Senate wants to spend $3 billion to provide health care and other things for these individuals. Here's the thing, if you start doing that, you're attracting more people to do it. So you have to make clear, and Obama's been guilty of saying if you come you're going to get amnesty. You got to be clear, that's not going to happen. You need to bring those people back. And once you do that, people will understand you can't just come here and then they will stop coming. But until you do that, they're going to keep coming.
Is he orchestrating?
No, he is. I mean, he's basically telling the world that just show up and you're good, and that's not acceptable.
What's to happen?
No, absolutely.
How do you stop this guy?
Well, if we have the Senate, we'll be able to defund. So we could defund him moving people around like he's doing. I mean, he's just dropping people in the middle of Arizona, in the middle of these other states, and it's just not fair to taxpayers because taxpayers have to ultimately foot the bill for that stuff.
At what point is impeachment the only option?
Oh, sorry about that.
I want to know, Obama keeps printing money all the time. Will things shut down eventually?
Well, you can only go on doing what you're doing for so long and there not be an adverse consequence with interest rates or with the international market thinking America may not be the place to go. And so, we've been warning that if we keep going on this course, you could have a fiscal crisis and things will get way worse than they are now if that were to happen. I do think we need to audit the Federal Reserve because that Fed just has way too much power to centrally plan and manipulate the economy. That was not the way it was intended to be. And so, Cantor actually, he would not allow us to vote on that. Maybe we'll get to vote on it now that he's gone. Yes.
Ron, I have lived this for over a year now, thinking that the leaders of these agencies have so much power. Sometimes I think they have more power than Congress. How can we change that? I do not like that. They're appointed.
Well, I think that if somebody like John Koskinen, the IRS commissioner, if he's going to not say these emails are lost, I'm going to use the same inference against him that he would use against an American citizen and presume him guilty. And then what I think we can do is we actually could bring articles of impeachment against him and remove some of these agency heads from office. Now, Reid may not take that up in the Senate, but I think it's very hard to justify to the American people that you're simply going to disregard a subpoena and that you're going to accept the excuse that somehow this stuff has been lost. Because nothing gets lost anymore when you're talking about email and electronics. And so I think it's an explanation that doesn't pass the laugh test, and to me it's reminiscent of a Watergate-style explanation. And so even Democrats, I'm hoping, will start to say that answer is not acceptable. But we'll see. We'll see what they say when we go back to Washington next week. Yes, sir.
When are you going to suspend the rules of engagement over in Afghanistan and Iraq, where our troops are getting slaughtered because they couldn't fire back? That's ridiculous to fight on something like that.
Yeah, I mean, well, one is the commander-in-chief sets the rules of engagement, so I don't know if Congress constitutionally would be able to set them because President under Article 2 is commander-in-chief, but you're absolutely right. What he's doing is he's instituting restrictive rules of engagement, so even if these guys are attacked, they can't respond unless they see that these guys who are attacking them have weapons. The problem is some of these guys have suicide vests or bombs or other things, and so you're basically in a situation where our service members are sitting ducks and are easy targets. And that's not the way we're supposed to fight wars. When you want to put our troops in harm's way, you tell them who the enemy is, and you let them use everything at their disposal to defeat that enemy.
As soon as you can get it changed, please do it.
Yes, sir.
Last question, please.
yes.
Last question.
Ron, all over the world, we see Sharia law filtering in into different towns, cities, and I understand even in some parts of this country, there are towns, sections of major cities that you just don't want to go into. How sensitive and what can you do in Congress to prevent Sharia law taking hold as it has done in England, France, even parts of Canada? I am very concerned about that, and I think every woman in this standing here should be very concerned about that.
So what they're doing now in Iraq, the Sunni terrorists are establishing an Islamic caliphate, and the first thing they've done is they've instituted Sharia law. And so they're beheading people who they think are infidels. Under Sharia law, if a woman is raped, they will actually stone to death the woman and not the perpetrators. And so you're talking about a political system that is fundamentally at odds with human freedom and that is really corrupt to the core. And so I think the first thing you got to understand is these individuals, these ISIS, AQI, the Shiite terror state in Iran, they operate on a fundamentally different worldview than we do. And so the notion that somehow you can just deal with them like Obama wants to do, that's only going to empower them, and it provides them more ability to export that to the United States. But I think, Sharia law, I think, is inconsistent with our Constitution. I don't support allowing any Sharia law to be established here. And I do think we need to look at our immigration system, and there's ways you can try to ferret this out by asking people a series of questions. For example, if you ask somebody who wanted to immigrate legally, do you think it's okay to give someone the death penalty for converting away from their religion? Under Sharia law, they believe that if you convert away from Islam, the proper penalty is the death penalty. And that's unacceptable. And so if we can ferret that out, we don't want that, obviously, to be brought here because it's not consistent with our values. And so I got time for one more quick one, and then I gotta get going.
What's your position on the fair tax?
I'm a co-sponsor of the fair tax. All right, one more quick one. One more. You got one? Yes, sir.
How long will it be before you get Bergdahl in front of the commission?
Well, unfortunately, with Bergdahl, it's not Congress, it's not in our court. I mean, it's something that the military is going to deal with, and clearly, if you listen to his unit members, he walked away from them. He put them at risk. Some of them died looking for him. So I think that's a classic case of desertion that needs to be brought before a court-martial. The problem is the Obama administration's likely not going to want that to play out in full view. And so I'm worried that they may exercise influence to keep that case from going to court-martial. And their explanation will be, well, he's already suffered enough by being with the Taliban for 5 years. The problem is that if they don't court-martial him, he gets an honorable discharge. Yep. He gets full back pay, so he'd probably get hundreds of thousands of dollars in his pocket, and he would be able to keep his rank of sergeant. So if he was court-martialed, he could be dishonorably discharged, reduced in rank to E1, and he would have to forfeit all his pay and allowances. And if he did, in fact, desert, he should be able to make his case. But if he deserted his troops in wartime, then you do not get an honorable discharge. And when someone like Susan Rice goes on the Sunday shows and says he served with honor and distinction, I'm wondering what planet is she from? Real quick.
All members of Congress are upset about the fact that he released all of those,
Surprisingly, even a lot of Democrats are upset about it. When I was in Guantanamo, the Bush administration released people, but those were people that they thought did no longer pose a threat. And even of the people that they thought no longer posed a threat, 30% of those ended up back in the fight. And that's just what we know. There are probably other guys who have committed attacks who we just haven't captured or killed. And so these guys are the worst of the worst. Nobody would ever say that they're not a threat. So we know they're going to go back to the fight because, again, this is their mindset. You know, they're not somebody who says, oh, yeah, let's just live with the United States. You know, they're motivated to export jihad.
Why is it more of Congress complaining or being upset, or expressing their being upset about him bypassing you guys?
Well, we are. The problem is at the end of the day, the Democrats are not going to be willing to really hold him accountable on the legal aspect of it, and you got to have bipartisan majorities if you really want to do it. But yeah, he totally violated the law. He didn't follow it. We think he may have even violated the spending laws that we've put in where we've defunded his ability to move these terrorists, and so we're in the process of investigating that. But ultimately, if we don't bite back on that, then he's just going to keep doing it. So, all right, guys, thanks a lot. We appreciate it.